From being so dangerous he can pull up anywhere past half court, to his splash bro having picture-perfect shooting form and breaking several NBA records, Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson have dominated from the backcourt on the Warriors for over a decade. So it isn't a surprise when NBA greats and the public at large consider them the best shooting duo in history. Their insane chemistry and outright ludicrous talent have netted them 4 NBA titles and have paved the way for the Golden State Warriors to be absolute juggernauts since 2015. They're both breaking and setting NBA records that could be untouchable for decades, like Steph breaking the all-time three-point record at only 33 years old and with at least 5 more years left in the tank, and Klay having the record for the most threes in a game with 14 when he only played for 27 minutes against the Bulls. The dynamic duo shoot lights out night after night, but they couldn't be more different in their styles and techniques. So you are most definitely going to want to hang out and see for yourself till the end of this video, because we're going to go over how they learn to shoot, their techniques, how wildly different their shots are, and how the Warriors' schemes help them hit nothing but net. It's crazy to think about, but if you heard Curry shot 6 times a game from over 30 feet and made more than half of them, it wouldn't be a surprise at all. The same could be said if Klay made 9 threes in 2 quarters. The Splash Brothers have almost normalized their incredible level of play. And it seems like when they aren't breaking records or shooting more than 40% from well beyond the arc, that they're going to go through a slump. While they both have had injuries that made the dynasty start to fade over the last few years, when they were both back and fully healthy, they showed the entire world they weren't done just yet. And they picked up their 4th NBA chip in only 8 seasons. If they both hadn't been injured, who knows if they could have got more. Nonetheless, we gotta go over their techniques and how they're similar in their success, but totally different in how they execute. It only makes sense to go over Klay's techniques first, because from a young age, he's been perfecting the fundamentals of basketball. His father, Michael Thompson, was a 2-time champion in the NBA as a center. You would think he probably didn't learn his shooting form from his dad, but it was playing pickup with Michael that would put him down the path of being a prolific shooter. Because he couldn't get any points near the basket against his pops, Klay had to shoot over him on the perimeter. Then, later in life, he would learn all of his trademark fundamentals from his middle school coach, who first taught him to shoot at close range in the key and perfect his form before moving to the three-point line. When it comes to Thompson's stance, he generally has his feet wider apart than his shoulders, and he was taught to always keep the ball above the forehead, making a V with his thumb and index finger before shooting. Before he releases, his offhand is only used to guide the ball, and his thumb points straight up after the release. When he was later drafted 11th in the first round for the Warriors in 2011, he picked up several tips from his head coach, Steve Kerr. Klay's shooting technique was already almost perfect at that point, but Kerr taught him how to make his own shot and how to make better use of screens. As 2 players that are the very definition of three-pointers and jump shots, it's pretty incredible how different he and Steph can actually be. Because when it comes to Curry, he has a similar history to Thompson, having a father in the NBA, but his dad, Del Curry, was much more instrumental in helping him learn his techniques. It would be hard to imagine that genetics didn't play a part in how Stephen developed, with how both him and his father are absolute sharpshooters. It wasn't all roses and rainbows though, because when Steph was in high school, his shot release was extremely low. He actually had to completely change up his shooting motion in order to shoot over taller players. So he went from having a heaving chest shot to where he is today, being able to shoot anywhere and even over much bigger defenders. If you look at Curry's form now, he keeps his shooting elbow, shoulder, and hip all lined up. Unlike Thompson, he does tilt his arm slightly inward, and his set point is a perfect 90-degree angle between his shoulder and his body. Unfortunately, rarely it can sometimes affect how he sees the rim. Another thing he does very differently than Klay, Curry actually uses an offhand thumb flick similar to Kyrie Irving. That small fact is interesting because it's exactly what young kids are taught not to do when it comes to shooting fundamentals in their early life. A lot of Curry's technique and stance is to properly shift power to the ball and to release at a height where a contested shot won't automatically end up in a block. You can see clearly when he's passed the ball for a spot-up shot how he dips the ball to his waistline, then pulls it up to forehead level. He then pulls it back again towards his head and then outward toward the rim. And if that isn't enough, this is all done in one smooth motion so no power is lost in transition. On his release, he keeps his offhand floppy and uses a 4-finger release on his main shooting arm, and his middle finger is the last one to touch the ball. Curry normally has his feet pointing slightly away from the basket to keep his arm, elbow, and knee lined up with the hoop. But there are times when he gets a pass-off ball or is coming off a screen and his feet will point at the rim when he pulls up. It's in these situations he'll rotate his hips so he's back in alignment, then shoots the ball. Speaking of setting up those shots, the Warriors have gone to great lengths to make sure they're using the Splash Brothers to their full potential. Before Klay's return, opposing defenses only really had one way to stop Golden State, and that was to just double and even triple team Steph. And to be honest, that was already good enough. But now, when Steph brings the ball up the court and gets double-teamed, he can pass to Klay, where they can then set up a loony screen and the rest is history. As long as the Splash Brothers are both on the court with no injuries, it seems these two certified snipers will always have a path not only to the playoffs, but to the finals. They continue to break records and make insane runs in the playoffs, even after some fans already wrote them off. Like in 2022 when they beat the Celtics in 6 games to get their 4th ring. And Steph himself bagged the 2022 Finals MVP, averaging 31.2 points, 6 boards, and 5 dimes. Curry won the award unanimously, and for very good reason. In that series, he was absolutely unstoppable beyond the arc. Steph made 31 threes over those 6 games, which is just under half of his total overall field goals made at 66. Klay was no slump either, because in that same final series against Boston, he averaged 17 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists. And it was on the final stage we got to see the famous Game 6 Klay. Because when he's on the line to win a title, he balls out in a big way. In crunch time, his 3-point shooting percentage goes from 40.2%, which is actually already insane, to a staggering 49.5% on 60% true shooting. With Steph and Klay both seemingly have a lot of respect and loyalty to Golden State, it's unlikely at best we will see either of them try to pack their bags and head out to any other team anytime soon. At worst, the Warriors have Klay locked up until the end of the 2024 season, and Steph signed a hefty 4-year extension in 2021 to keep him with the team until 2026. It's much more likely we'll see the two of them rack up many more records and accolades in the years to come. The absolute absurdity of talent that the Splash Brothers combine for is already historic. They can throw it up from any range, and no fan of basketball ever questions whether or not it's gonna swish. So whether it be with Klay's perfect fundamentals or Curry's super smooth single motion shooting technique, the only question left is out there on the court, and that is, can Steph and Klay get one more ring?